Welcome to TV Toastmasters. I'm Beth Genly, your host for this segment, and I'm also president of Toastmasters for Speaking Professionals, my home club, one of the two clubs I belong to besides TV Toastmasters. This evening, I am welcoming Allison Bennett to our show. Allison Bennett is a strategic transformation coach. Try saying that 3 times fast. And she is here to talk with us about advanced communication skill sets. Allison, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. Great being here.
Awesome.
I love the way you begin with talking about tripping over your tongue or having tongue twisters. And actually, that's something that happens a lot in communications. And I think if we can allow each other just to mess up or flub up or say the wrong word or trip over our tongues a little bit and allow ourselves to do it and just be a little bit more chill about it, then I think communication can happen a lot easier.
So being chill in communication is pretty easy in some situations, but in conversations that have sort of high stakes, I think it's very easy to get involved in your own emotions. I've watched this with my friends and I've watched it with myself. So let's imagine that I'm in a conversation and I'm beginning to get really uneasy. I'm getting anxious or angry or sad or something's going on. And I feel like the whole thing is about to go over a cliff. What do I do to bring it back?
That's a great question. So the first thing you do is exactly what you just did. You noticed. You went, aha, something's happening. I'm reacting or I'm resisting. And that is the very first thing to actually just notice. Something is happening. And when you notice it, you can notice, oh, I'm feeling an emotion. And then you have a choice. You can be a victim of the emotion and continue rolling down that reaction. Oh, yes, this is me. I am being mad and this person's making me mad. Or you can roll it back and not be the victim of the emotion and actually be curious about what's going on and start to question what's going on in your mind or with the other person.
So when I do that, the way that I've kind of trained myself to think about it is to say, okay, I'm feeling this emotion. That's giving me some information probably about my values.
Could be.
Or my value set, or what I believe the other person's value set is.
Well, yes. So I love that. It is just information. And I think that's that, aha, I'm having an emotion. And the second piece is the awareness. And the awareness is, a piece of information. Now, it could be a point of view that I'm taking, they're saying something and I'm reacting to it because it's my point of view. Or it could be, I'm reacting because it's their point of view about me. And we don't even know what it is yet, but if we can just deal with it as if it's just a piece of information and start asking questions about it, like, is that true?
Is that true? What a wonderful question.
Is it even true? And then their first answer might be, well, of course it's true. I'm feeling this way. So they must be, being mean to me, or they must be upset at me, or I must be upsetting them, or whatever the deal is. And, but we don't know the whole circumstance of where, like, did they have a bad day when they came in to have this conversation? Are they playing somebody else's tapes in their head? Is that even my thought to be upset? Or is that my mom? Oh my, that's my mom's voice. If somebody said that to my mom, she would be upset. And so now we can go, oh, I'm actually not really upset about it. I've been kind of trained to be upset about it because of my mom. Well, what's great is that as we start to ask questions about our reaction, instead of falling into victimhood of the reaction and having to have that reaction, start asking questions. Now we can step back and we can start to experience that wonderful thing called detachment. And that detachment actually is the road to us being lovingly logical in dire situations or in.
And it sounds to me like you're saying that the pathway to detachment is curiosity.
Yes.
You notice, and then you're like, well, what is that
Yeah.
really? What does it mean? Is it true? Is it me? Is it them? Is it
just an interesting point of view? Because
Yeah,
most of the time it's just a point of view.
Okay.
Doesn't have to have meaning.
Okay. So then when I detach, then I kind of step back from it a little bit and I don't I don't engage in the little play that I was going into. I don't engage in that. I don't play that role the way I set up for myself.
Right. Well, actually, now you just have choice. So, well, maybe it's fun for you to get all upset and angry. And so you could, but now you're actually not being a victim. You're choosing to get all upset and angry. And maybe you're going to learn something from it. I'm not saying it's not about right or wrong. It's about, what is your end goal? What is your priority? And we'll talk about that in a minute. And what is your priority? What's the end goal? But the point is to be in choice. So now you're in choice. You can go, okay, you know what? This is still bugging me and I'm going to react this way. Or you can go, oh, you know what? I really rather have this resolved than to get upset. And you could just have a choice about it. And then when you have a choice, then you can choose to pivot. And sometimes the pivot is just a quick, aha, I'm noticing I'm having emotion, a reaction. Maybe I don't want to have a reaction. And then you just do a slight pivot, just a little pivot. And then most people feel pivots are 180 degrees. Mm-hmm. Well, 180 degrees can start with a 5% pivot. And then you could go down that road and pivot some more. And then pretty soon, instead of going down an angry, upset conversation where no one's a winner, you're kind of finding your way down a path where it's a win-win-win situation. I'm all about a win-win-win. You win, I win, and whatever we're talking about or the project wins.
That's beautiful. I want to back this up again for a second and dig in a little more because so far what you're talking about, the way that I understand it, is an entirely internal process. I'm monitoring my own emotions and my own reactions and my own choices and comparing them to my goal or my project or whatever it is. How does that translate into communication? So I'm thinking one thing might be for me to say, why do you sound so angry? Which gives you the opportunity to say, well, I'm not angry, I'm emphasizing or whatever.
Correct. Right? And that is a good way. And my suggestion is, because we create, like, whatever is going on in our world stems from what's going on in our head. So I tend to try to really work within my own world instead of laying the onerous of it on the other person. So I think I would probably choose, instead of saying, hey, you sound really angry, I would probably say something more self-reflective, going, I'm feeling really uneasy right now. Or actually, here's a great example.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with a friend, and something was happening in the conversation, and all of a sudden I noticed myself just like freezing and kind of shrinking down and just kind of pulling back a little bit. And I said, I'm feeling hounded. Exactly. Okay. So, and then that gave us a great opportunity to really explore communications. So first thing I want to say, like the word hounding or any word is a symbol or, communication symbol, like a word, for a picture that is in our head. And then the picture that's in our head also is a way to describe whatever we're feeling, or something that would take like a book to put into words. So when I said I'm feeling hounded, the picture that was in my head was of like a big basset hound who's like woof and is trying to going after something, but it's all slobbery and it's got ears waggling, and quite frankly, it's from the first time I heard the word hound, which is a Disney movie, The Fox and the Hound. So the word hounding in my mind actually is in cartoon characters. And yes, I mean, I'm pulling back because I feel like this dog is like going to be licking and slobbering all over my face and it's like really gross. So I'm pulling back. But if I say hounding, what's your picture in your mind?
Blood and claws and death. It's really scary stuff.
Like just for the fox, right?
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
So, hunts, exactly. So in both of our pictures, they involve a hunt, and they're involving something, but the point of it is very different. So if I were to say, Beth, you're hounding me. Why are you hounding?
I'm really not.
Exactly. So I could say, hey, I'm feeling hounded, and you can go startle, and then I can notice a reaction and go, aha, here's a piece of communication. And we can talk about, we could talk about the word hounding, what it looks like to you, what it looks like to me, and then we could choose to either use the word or discard the word. And you know what we've just done now?
What have we done?
We have decided to overcome a distraction to the real goal. So we're both reacting, I'm reacting, and now we're reacting to the word hounded. You know, you've got one kind of hounding and I've got another hounding. I'm reacting to your reaction. Okay, so we could just stop all of that because that's all a distraction to whatever the real goal of communication was for us.
And our real goal is for me to win and you to win and our project, whatever it is we're trying to work out in our conversation to win, and distractions just don't help.
Right.
Yeah.
And so going down those distracting rabbit trails, it's fine to say, hey, I think we have a communication thing here going on. I feel this. What about you? Oh, totally different. Okay. And then skip on and then just settle it. Because, and this is where the questions, is it true? I'm feeling hounded and you react, oh no, she thinks I'm like killing her. Or, and I'm not doing that. Well, okay, are either one of them true? No, they're really not true. They're just interesting points of view and we're reacting. Let's get out of reaction.
Beautiful. When we come back, we need to take a short break.
Great.
When we come back, I want to go into this even a level deeper and raise the stakes a little more.
Ooh,
so
love it.
We will be right back in just a few moments.
Hello, I'm Lisa Steindorf, and I'd like to invite you to attend my session, 3 Keys to Better Results, the Art of Direct Communication. When you attend this workshop, you will learn the real secret to how communication works. You'll learn easy tools to make it work best in any situation, and also you'll learn how to avoid and deal with conflict if it does arise. So you'll find ways to hear better, to be heard better, and generally to feel better when communicating with others. So please do join me at Unleashed Potential, the District 7 Spring Conference on April 27th at Camp Withycombe, Clackamas. For more information about the conference, go to d7toastmasters.org.
Welcome back. I am Beth Genly, and I'm here with Allison Bennett, and we are talking about advanced communication skill sets. And I promised you right before the break that we'd be taking it even a level deeper. So I'm going to set up a situation here where, say I have a business partner or a life partner with whom I need to have a very difficult conversation. And in fact, maybe we've already had this conversation before about 50 times. And it always goes the same way. It's not good. But I've reached the point where I feel like we must have this conversation again. And I'm just dreading it. I don't even want to bring it up. Now what?
That's excellent. I have a lot of clients, again, either in life partnership or business partnerships that I work through this with. And it's fantastic because in our mind, we've created this reality, well, it's always happened this way, so it's going to happen this way. It's not going to work out. So we've created this huge castle or this huge quagmire of problems, right? And so the only thing we have to do is to dodge the problems and not even very much hoping getting to a resolution, that win-win-win. So how do we get past that? Well, first of all, the first thing we can do is just say, okay, today is a new day. I'm a little different than I was yesterday. This other person could be a little different. So what else is possible than going into that same thing? And just asking, what else can happen? What else is possible? It starts to break and loosen up like those quagmired molecules, so to speak. And then we can ask more questions.
So I'm tripping over my tongue again.
Great, love it. Laughter.
So my first step is to look at myself and say, where have I trapped myself in my own expectations? Where have I trapped myself in my own prior experiences? And what else is possible, which is such a beautiful phrase. I'm going to put that right in there with, is that true? But then and then ask more questions. Am I asking questions of me or asking questions of my partner in the conversation? What are you thinking here?
Well, because I would already be knowing I have to do this conversation, so it's already going on in my head, right?
Right.
So
But
the replay and how I think it's going on. So I would start with me, because it only takes one person to stop a war. It only takes one person to change a conversation, and it only takes one person to change everything that's going on in a room. And so I choose not to be a victim, but to be the person who can change things. So I'm going to work on me, and what can I do to change so that I can have a better outcome? And one of the things I can do is ask, is that true? Are all these things true? Does it have to happen now? No, it doesn't have to happen. Okay, so what would I love to happen? Or what is something that, how can I get us to a place that something that neither one of us ever thought could happen could open up as a possibility?
That sounds like you're talking about goals, and you said you'd talk a little bit more about goals.
Yeah, so priorities. And so most of us know about priorities. It's our priority to get this thing, like maybe this house or this thing, and we have very tangible priorities. Well, some of the priorities I'm talking about are more perhaps character priorities, or what is it like priorities, or energy or energetic priorities. So for instance, one of my priorities in this moment in my life is to have gracious interactions. I think we can all have a win-win-win, and I want to always be gracious and help other people lay the foundation so we all can work graciously. Now, gracious also has different meanings too. So like if I say gracious, what's something that comes to your mind?
A whole bunch of things. So one of them is, I'm thinking of this very difficult conversation.
Right.
Do I feel safe enough to be gracious? So that would be one question that comes to my mind.
That's a great question. So, and for me, graciousness involves also safety as far as I'm concerned. And that's also a secondary question. So for me, graciousness is, okay, I know where some of these buttons are of this person. I'm going to graciously not push those buttons because I want a different reaction. I want a different resolution. And if I continue to push those buttons, then we're just going to get explosions, or we're going to get shut down, or whatever the other person does, right? So how can I graciously put us both in a win-win-win situation?
Cool. Okay, so in my mind, that boils down to integrity. And we were talking before, and you had a big reaction to the word integrity that I found was just fascinating. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so why don't you first talk about your what does integrity mean to you?
Well, I've been thinking about it since our first conversation. When we first talked about it, I thought, I don't even know.
Exactly.
And later I thought, well, it has to do with authenticity, and it has to do with being true to my values. But it's still a bit vague, I think. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I work with a lot of different people from a very wide strata of life in many different countries and cultures, and businesses. And it's like, well, if you want to be in a business, you should definitely have integrity as your first top 5. Well, we all have a different idea of what integrity looks like or how it's walked out. So for me, I personally would never put integrity on one of my top 5 personal priorities because I've seen it mishmashed in too many different ways, and I've seen it walked out in ways that are nothing that would be the same definition as my definition of integrity. So, and even just in that, just clearing that little piece of communication up is enough to lay foundation for a different conversation.
And given what you just said, my first reaction would be, well, let's just throw out the word. That it seems like that's another rabbit hole. If we're trying to talk about how to communicate well, having a big discussion about what is integrity really is, Well,
and if that's your goal, then have the conversation.
Right.
But if it's not your goal, then it becomes a distraction to what your real goal is.
Right. Okay. So now I feel safe because I'm being more gracious, and now I feel aligned with my values, let's say. I've still mostly been doing all that in here, right? That's been my personal journey. Now I've arrived at my conversation with you. How do I keep that going?
with me as the person who you're dreading having the conversation, or me as the coach?
I haven't with. Let's start with A and go to B.
I love that idea. let's just, and this is beautiful. What a beautiful little picture for people to see. We had a conversation, you had an idea of where it might go, and I asked another question, and we were both open to just seeing where it heads and to see where the possibility of this conversation could lead to us. And that's one thing I really encourage people to have, is not to become positional as I want this and I want this, and just to stick their positions and battle it out, but to actually open up and be able to move. So A, as a person who is having the problem, or who's having the difficult conversation, well, so you could just start asking questions. Ask what are their priorities, and what are they hoping to get out of this, and what about the whole project, or our communication, or what's important. Is it important for us to stay friends, or do we need to, stay business partners, or is it fine that we're just going to agree to disagree on this? I mean, there's so many questions that can open up conversations to like a whole Willy Wonka world of who knows what possibilities are out there.
Well, and if it's Willy Wonka, it's got to include chocolate, so it's better already.
And happy, and absolutely.
And lots of singing, so I think we're there.
I think we're good, yeah.
All right, so let's just wrap it up in a bow here.
Great.
Can you kind of summarize this a little bit for us?
Absolutely. So when we're having like challenging conversations, the first thing to do, and we're all about noticing ourselves and how we're reacting it, because we don't want to be a victim to our emotions. We actually want to be a win-win-win conqueror of the best and possible outcome. So the first thing is to go, aha, and notice, oh, I'm having a reaction. That's the first thing to do. And then the second is question, and go into awareness. There's an awareness here of something is not exactly what I want it to be, and now you can go into question. And when you go into question, now you can question, is this true? You can think, well, that's an interesting point of view. They have that point of view. You can say, this is an interesting point of view. I'm having that point of view. You could also ask a question like, well, is this thought even mine? Or is that my mom's voice, or my boss's voice, or, whoever, my third grade teacher's voice, that's coming through, and it's not even my opinion that I'm reacting to here. And then you can go into more questions, and from there you can go into choice. Now you have a choice. And you can choose to continue down the rabbit trail. You can choose to stop and say, what does this word mean to you? Because I'm having a bad reaction to it. And then from there you could choose to toss it out or to keep it. And then from there, or you could choose just to completely do something different. But now you're in control because you're in choice. And once you're in choice, then you can choose to stay the road or to pivot. And it could just be a slight little pivot. Like, well, let's toss that word out. Or it could be a big pivot, is like, let's try to do something we've never thought of doing before.
Ooh, that opens up so many possibilities. Mm-hmm. And speaking of questions, I bet the people that have been watching this are just fascinated and wanting to ask you a lot of questions. Yeah. So
wonderful.
So how can you be reached, and where can more information be found?
Well, the easiest way to reach me is AllisonInnovates@gmail.com. That's Allison, Allison, Innovates, Innovates, @gmail.com. And recently I just started a fun pet little new project called the Happier Hour Coach. And that's because I noticed that when we put people in settings such as restaurants and it's a more relaxed setting, then people's guards come down, their barriers come down, and we can move through conversations and get to resolutions so much faster. So I often meet people at a happy hour or a restaurant, well chosen, of course. And so I have a new website called thehappierhourcoach.com. It's brand new. We're just kind of still putting it together, but you can reach me through that as well.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much for joining me this evening, Allison. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I love the idea of an even happier hour and having a coach there. This is Beth Genly. Thank you so much for joining us at TV Toastmasters, and I hope you'll stick around for even more.